Howdy, howdy, fellow football fans, and welcome back to another edition of the ONETA Football Show, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, I am your host, Evan Davies, and it is a very special edition today, as we are going to be starting our NFL expansion series, which we're going to be talking about if the NFL is to expand, how many teams are we going to do, where are we going to put those teams, all that good stuff. We're going to get to that in about 5 to 10 minutes on the show because beforehand, we're going to talk a little bit of news and notes going on in the NFL, specifically who got paid. So, right before the expansion series starts, we're going to start by who got paid, whether it was a good decision or a bad decision. Without further ado, we start with the biggest one. It's my boy Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers came to a negotiation finished up with happiness. Jordan Love got paid with the largest signing bonus in NFL history and a $55 million a year average. To say that this is enormous would be an understatement. However, is it a positive? We're seeing $220 million for an average of $55 million a year. $75 million signing bonus. And from what is known, it looks like this breaks Packer rules, and Jordan's going to have guaranteed money far longer than the Packers usually like to guarantee money. They usually like to guarantee contracts the first year and maybe a little bit into the second. Jordan's goes very far into the future, which I am all for because I truly believe he is the quarterback of the future in Green Bay. If you look at the last half of that year, although a small sample size, you cannot argue that Jordan Love is a top 10 quarterback talent with the ability to go even higher than a lot of guys. The only reason he's not immediate top 10 right now is because of the small sample size. But I'm already on record in my private life, possibly even on the show, and definitely on the show in the future, as we already did a little bit of expansion piece with some co-hosts in the future to look to. I'm already of the belief that Jordan Love has done more to prove himself than even the Trevor Lawrences of the world, who just got the $55 million deal, a year deal, I should say. So I think this is a great move by the Packers. Shore up your future, get your guy, and get him while you can get him as cheap as possible. And a lot of people may say $55 million a year, that's not cheap. Of course it's not. That's the going market. But you don't want to be stuck with Dallas going, oh, we don't know. And then you're going to be held over the border, over the barrel for $60 or $65 million a year. Because that's where the market's going to go for the quarterback position, unless we see a crazy lawsuit NFL Sunday ticket style lawsuit really screw up the salary cap. We're not going to see that. So inherently, get your quarterback while you can. This is a great move on the Green Bay Packers. He's shown nothing but improvement his entire time there. He's gone to really show that he has the ability to be an MVP caliber quarterback in the NFL. And if we're talking to my wife, she already thinks he's a future Hall of Famer. Might be wild, but you never know. So it'll be fun. But Jordan got paid. Another guy who got paid, and I'm completely the opposite opinion. Miami Dolphins struck a deal with Tua Tagovailoa for $52 million a year. To say that I think this is a ridiculous contract is an understatement. 4 years, $212.4 million, $167 million guaranteed. You're looking at an average of $53.1 million a year. In my opinion, Tua Tagovailoa is not even worth $35 million a year. I have been down on Tua Tagovailoa almost since he was drafted. During his draft class, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I was trying to be an open-minded scout. It's not the kind of quarterback I normally go for, but I did not have high hopes for Tua, especially in Miami. Tua does not have the physical ability, in my opinion, to take that team over the top to win playoff games and to win Super Bowls. Tua is clearly smart enough and athletic enough to execute an offense. but Tua is not a top 10, top 15 almost quarterback. I'd have to go look at my rankings, but I don't recall Tua being even my top 15. And if he was, he barely made it. It's no disrespect to the man. It's disrespect to the athletics. It's not even disrespect. It's just the facts of the athletics on the field. Tua's injury has really held him back from his college days forward. Plus, he didn't have that much raw physical ability before that, even. Tua's a hell of a nice guy, from what everyone says. Tua's a great teammate. I don't really hear anything bad about Tua the teammate or Tua the person. That's not what's being in question. What's being in question is the judgment of the Miami Dolphins giving this guy 4 years of guaranteed money. $167 million guaranteed at best. That's a 3-year guarantee. You do not get the privilege of benefit of the doubt in this when you've seen the sample size. Where, ironically enough, I think a Jordan Love contract's more worthy. He showed more promise in the small sample size, and you've had him in the building for 4 years, and you're seeing continual improvement. Tua, on the other hand, you've seen him, same draft class, and he's plateaued. He got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and he could throw the ball deep, and they have to sit there and wait for it like a punt half the time, or by half the time, I mean almost every throw he makes to them. But you've plateaued with Tua, and that's with a phenomenal offensive scheme by Mike McDaniel. What happens if they plateau again and McDaniel's out? Who's going to take Tua? This is not a good franchise move. I couldn't agree less with this contract signing for Tua. Again, not disrespect to the man, it's disrespect to the play on the field. But more positive notes here. 2 other guys that deserve to get paid got paid. DJ Moore, hell of a tough SOB receiver for the Chicago Bears. Regardless if he's the rival of my home team, you have to give respect to him. You want to foster your young quarterback in Caleb Williams. This is an incredibly smart way to do it. $110 million, I believe he got in this one. I'm going to have to double check that one quick. I may be confusing that with the next contract that I have here. However, DJ Moore, productive player. Yeah, 4 years, $110 million. He's a productive player that's a reliable target and still can make the big play. Could not agree more with that decision. You need players to surround Caleb Williams for success. Caleb Williams cannot do it alone. If Chicago really wants to make a run at making this team competitive, playoff worthy, and potentially going to go win a Super Bowl in the future, you need players like DJ Moore to surround your young quarterback. Good on DJ for getting paid. Glad Chicago paid someone that was worthy of it for once. Good on DJ. And our final big guy that got paid, Tristan Wirfs, 5 years, $140, highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. Tristan Wirfs was a vital piece to solidifying that Tom Brady era success as a rookie and forward through his last years into Baker Mayfield. Without Tristan Wirfs, that anchoring part of that line, you do not have the success in Tampa Bay that you did over the last couple of years. He is a hell of a phenomenal talent and a great tackle in the NFL, worth every single penny of it. Is he the best tackle in the NFL? No. But not everybody can have the best tackle in the NFL. But he's an extremely worthwhile player that you want to have. Great character guy from all reports. Great teammate, great leader, and a phenomenal blocker to make sure your quarterback stays upright and your running backs can have lanes to move through. Smart play on Tampa Bay's part, going to Tristan Wirfs on that one. I like that as well. Those are all the guys that got paid. And I mean paid, which is great. Now it's time. It's time for our NFL expansion series, where a lot of guys could get paid if this were to happen. During this series, in which I'm talking about, we are imagining an NFL that wants to get new teams. We're imagining an NFL that understands what it wants, and that means money. How do you do that? You make more teams. you expand to new markets in the US and internationally. In this series, we are going to be asking the question, what if, essentially, what if the NFL expanded to 40 teams? Or 0 teams? Is that a wild concept? Absolutely. However, it is the most logical concept you can think of. You can make anything work. However, part of the beauty of the NFL is the mathematics works, which is another reason everyone hates the 17th game. It just screws up the nice numbers that you had. 16 games, 32 teams, they all theoretically could play at the same time. And math works out perfectly for that. The top third of the league essentially gets into the playoffs. It all made sense mathematically. That's part of the beauty of the NFL. 32 teams, 8 divisions, 4 teams per division. In this scenario, we would get 40 teams, 8 divisions, 5 teams per division. So you still have good math there. Everything is still equal, even. Makes playing sense. You need to think about the expansion of what you're going to be doing. So we're going to be previewing cities that could bid and be worthwhile options, both domestically and internationally. New teams and divisions of what they would look like, how we would do that. We're going to do an entire expansion draft of players that could be eligible. That was a really fun podcast. I've already recorded that one. Really fun podcast with 3 additional co-hosts helping me with the draft, so it wasn't just my opinion constantly. And we're also going to be doing some expansion reactions and takeaways of what would it mean to really expand the NFL in this way. So the real question is, what if there were 40 teams in the NFL? You may be asking, why would we even do this? We are continually seeing the NFL moving to new markets internationally, trying to make more money. We are continually seeing the push for more media rights deals. But eventually we're starting to see a little bit of a cap with bidding wars and things out there. You might say, cap, what are you talking about? Everyone keeps making more money. They do. But you're seeing a more competitive market of where people want to stream and do things. You're also seeing bids kind of just eking up. How do you make more? Instead of saying, hey, Evan, why don't we add 1 team or 1 game for every team? Okay, you'd add an additional 16. Or you add an additional 16 games. The scenario that you go to an 18-game season, which is a real thing. I already talked about that in a previous podcast. But why not add 8 teams, essentially mini league? You're adding 4 games per week by doing that. You could even go back to 16 games and still have more games than what you're doing. It's a higher media rights contract. It's higher revenue sharing for everybody because you have more people coming in through different markets. But they already clearly want a team in London. They're clearly going after the European market, and they're always opening their eyes of where they could play different things. That is what we're going to be asking is, what if there are 40 teams in the NFL? And on this week, we're going to be looking at places that could house those teams, both domestically and internationally. There are a lot of questions that you have to ask. It's not as simple as, oh, that'd be cool if they were there. Okay? There are, roughly speaking, 4 to 5 things that you really need to consider, generally speaking, for everything. Number 1, there needs to be significant public interest in that area. Okay? As much as it could be fun or cool, which is a fun exercise if you ever want to do it, I highly suggest go look up Bill Barnwell's article from about 2 months ago, so that would be roughly June of 2024, in which he proposes an expansion to almost 100 NFL teams and all the different markets that could get them across the United States and Canada and Mexico, theoretically. But you can't just say, I use that article to bring this up, as you need, 1, significant public interest in that area. As much as it'd be cool in theory to be like, oh, what if there was a Hawaiian team? Hawaii doesn't have the population and the city density to really make that worthwhile. It'd be cool in theory. It was fun when they played the Pro Bowl there. But it's not a worthwhile investment for the NFL to go to Hawaii to house a team. So you need because there's not enough public interest in that area. Number one. Number two, there needs to be significant financial benefit from the proposed city. You need to have a large enough city and metro population of people to draw from. You need to have an average income in the area be high enough to really be interested in that. Now, I'm not going to go super into that detail, but something to consider. You're also, if you were the NFL, you'd be thinking about trying to get public subsidies, additional bonuses. For instance, this wasn't an NFL thing, but we've seen this in entertainment and media. And I would have to go check it to see if the Super Bowl got anything from being in Vegas. But we're seeing large events that go in stadiums, such as a WrestleMania, getting paid to be there, to getting public subsidy. You want to get an area that's friendly to your business. That's the whole point. So you're trying to find a place that wants to do something like that. I use the WrestleMania example because they were paid $5 to $10 million and paid rent-free in some of the buildings that they were using to house that event. And that's a huge event that comes in like an NFL game does. So and plays in an NFL stadium. Or it will be there in Vegas next year, I'm sorry, but we're already seeing the subsidies that they're starting to get. So you need to think about that stuff. Number three, is there a stadium available for you to play in? Or are there construction options? Now, obviously, you can say, well, you can build anywhere. That's true. So I can't go super into that, but is there an existing stadium that would be worthwhile for you to go to? And four, there's an asterisk on this one because it wouldn't be such an international problem. However, if you're going to think domestically in the United States, there needs to be limited dilution of an existing franchise or franchises. Okay? Now, we have the population density in the Northeast, in which you could say, oh, Northeast could easily take a team. Okay, that's true. But you already have, that's, where are you going to put it? You could say, oh, we're going to put it in Connecticut. Just throwing one out there. Because tri-state area, you can go from New York. But when you put it in Hartford, Connecticut, let's say, you're essentially pulling fans away from the Patriots, the Jets, and the Giants by doing that. Now, is there enough population density in the Northeast that could theoretically work? Sure. But why would you want to inherently take away when instead you could foster new? It's kind of the thing you want to do. You don't want to take away from your existing market. You want to take away from other markets that you tangibly kind of in, but kind of not. So that's where you want to go. So we're going to start here with U.S. bidding cities. That's how we're going to handle this one. So we're going to see U.S. cities that could theoretically bid on having a team here. We're going to start with one of the most logical options, San Antonio, Texas. The census has an estimated 1.472 million people just living in San Antonio alone, with a 2.655 million people in the metro San Antonio area. San Antonio is a really fun market, and sports-wise, they only have the Spurs. There's a reason every time new spring leagues come into play, San Antonio always gets a team. They can tap into some of that Mexican market as well, and that Hispanic market. And it's a metro area that's growing at 3.8%. Okay, so you already have population, great. Statistics all show that this would be a worthwhile team, and you don't have a lot of sports competition in San Antonio, with the hotbed of Texas helping you out. So it's a very interesting market to think about. San Antonio would be a really high-class bid to think about. Number two, San Diego, California. 1.38 million people to San Diego with a 3.276 metro population. We already have NFL history here. That's another huge benefit to wanting to go to San Diego. You could reinvigorate some of that, but are you pulling away from the Los Angeles market? That's one question that you may have to think about in that one. Also, beyond the Padres, you don't have any real competition for sports fandom. So they're available for more sports here, which is great. You can tap into more of that Hispanic market. That is a logical conclusion to make. The only issue you may also have is both the city and the metro population are going down in population. Now, it's not like you're losing 100,000 people every year. But the percentages show that your population is going down, so that may not be your best bet in the future. Our next city that could bid on a team, we're going to stay in that hotbed of Texas, kind of like San Antonio. Austin, Texas. It's one of the fastest growing markets in all of the United States. In fact, it might be the number one if you actually look statistically. Just under 1 million people population, but the metro has a 2.42 million people. The metro population of Austin, Texas is growing at 6%. Okay? That's insane. And you're in the hotbed of football in Texas. Texas itself could have more teams. And you may be saying, oh, wait, Cowboys, Texans. You're right in the middle of that kind of stuff. That's true, you are. Only thing that exists about that, one, taking a little bit of shine away from Dallas isn't going to hurt them. Because they are an international brand at this point. They're not just a national brand. Second, you're getting more and more people coming to that market, and they have no pro sports representation on major levels. They only have the university, and the University of Texas clearly can support teams there. So you have a logical conclusion of Austin could be a very, very worthwhile addition to an expansion series. Let's go to the birthplace of football, Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, 907,000 people, 2.16 million metro population, and that population is going up by 1.08%. Again, outside of Major League Soccer, no real competition here for sports. But because of Ohio State being here, that they can really support a team, that they love their football. We're just an hour or so away, hour and change away from the birthplace of football in the northeast of Ohio. So you have a lot of history here with a little bit of less competition for a major market in terms of different sports teams involved, who's pulling away. So even if you're a little bit concerned about, we're dipping under the million mark, hey, don't be so concerned about that. Because you have markets that are thriving, such as Green Bay, who only their metro population, which metro's a metro population for Green Bay is real heavy air quotes, being someone who grew up, I think, technically in the Green Bay metro market, or right outside the Green Bay metro market in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The Green Bay metro market is 330,000 people. It also counts a city named Shawano, Wisconsin, which is 37 minutes away, and that's a real 37-minute highway. There's nothing in between it kind of metro. So if a team like Green Bay, which obviously there's a lot of X factors, history, the success of the team, it being such a part of the identity of the state, a market like Columbus easily, as we're going into smaller markets, don't be so concerned about the numbers if that is something that you are really interested in. Also, New Orleans. New Orleans itself only has 370,000 people. And the metro is less than 1,972,000. However, again, New Orleans, huge NFL market. So numbers are a guide, but numbers are not our full dictation. But it's a good way to start thinking of who could house a team. You're not necessarily looking for the most populated city, but where could you really go with good numbers to support it? Now, other options that we have. Oklahoma City, which I find to be really interesting, 694 with a 1.45 million metro, up 2.36%. What I love about the Oklahoma City market is outside of basketball, no competition for major professional sports, but it's good that you see that they can support a team. 2, you are pulling from 2 major football programs that have history that people in that area know, love, and will die for in Oklahoma and the Sooners and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. So both of those teams showcase that football is a hotbed here. And if you bring them the highest quality in that area, it's great. Plus, you're sandwiched in between 2 teams. So One of the big caveats, Oklahoma City is one that to think about. You want limited dilution to an existing franchise or franchises. Your two closest franchises to Oklahoma City are Dallas and Kansas City. The Cowboys will not be hurt by another team in Oklahoma, especially if you can continue a Red River rivalry essentially in the NFL, which is huge off the college market. Plus, with Patrick Mahomes existing in Kansas City for at least another decade, unless something crazy happens, and Kansas City's already grown to be a major, major team in today's NFL, you're not going to be concerned if Oklahoma City comes in. You should have the thought process to think about it, but Oklahoma City is a really good option here. Another one, if we want to expand westward, Portland, Oregon, 2.5 in the metro. Really, really beautiful city. Has the Trailblazers, has a pro team. Interesting place to go. Development could be kind of hard in the heart of the city. Certainly, as someone who's visited the city and really, really loves it, they do a really good job protecting the nature around it. You can kind of see it's nestled in between a bunch of trees and a bunch of forests, and it's a nice, cool metropolis, and then just surrounded by nature. So you'd have to really build outside of the city, but a really cool option to get that Pacific Northwest crowd. Especially, you could pull from the Eugene style fans out in Oregon and Oregon State. They're both popular teams out there. Then you go to Omaha. Omaha is another one that's interesting. You have the Cornhuskers there in Nebraska, so you have the interest. Omaha is just under a million metro, but it is growing at a percent. What I love about Omaha is there is zero competition professionally. And it's a part of the country that really doesn't have anything pro sports wise. Now you may think, like I just said, the devil's advocate, playing devil's advocate. Oh, well, do we want to go to a place with no real competition? Because does that show that we can even support a team? It's a fair question. However, Kansas, for the most part, just underneath Nebraska, doesn't have a team until you get to Kansas City. So Kansas City dominates that market, but that stretch is very wide. You have to go really far out to Denver to get to the next market. The Dakotas are just above you. They don't have a team. Iowa doesn't have a team. Iowa gets pulled between Minnesota and Green Bay and Chicago. Those are the markets that are around you. You have this big giant circle in the Midwest of teams that kind of pull from all these different states. But that centrally located basis in Nebraska and the Dakotas and northern Kansas, and even northern Missouri to a degree that can be somewhat jaded now due to the St. Louis Rams leaving all that time ago. That's a really popular option of millions of people that live in that hardy heartland, hardy heartland, if you will, of the country, in which those are football fans. They're down home Midwesterners that love them some pigskin football. You don't believe me? Just look at me. I am one of them. So Omaha's a really untapped market that could be very interesting to expand to and to think about. Plus, they host the College World Series. They're big sports fans there. It'll be worthwhile. Now, another one, it's kind of the crash and burn series again. We could go back to Oakland, California. Oakland, the metro is 4.56 or 58 million people. California could house another team or two if you really wanted to. But they're going down at almost 3.5% population wise. You're pulling from a huge metro market, which also is somewhat weakened by the move of San Francisco. Now, obviously, the 49ers still super popular in the Bay Area. I'm not saying they're going to magically lose fans, but being almost an hour away in Santa Clara playing does not help your chances of being a Bay Area team. Your issues with going to Oakland, number one, is that you have a ton of history of bad blood between the city and teams. Now, they love their Raiders. There's nothing to say Oakland doesn't like the Raiders. But the idea of a new team that doesn't have that fostered history could be really problematic. You had all the fights in Oakland about getting new stadiums done. Same thing that the Athletics were dealing with. Can you even get a stadium built with the help of Oakland? That's a huge question mark. Plus, you have a ton of competition for eyeballs in the Bay Area. You have the 49ers, you have the Giants, Athletics for at least for a while. You have the Golden State Warriors, and it's California and it's beautiful. There's a lot to do. So if you already have that and you have some bad blood to get over it, it's something to consider. However, again, Oakland, really, really good option because it has so many good people and a good history for the NFL outside of the business dealings of Al Davis. Now, another really interesting option, we could go to Orlando. Orlando, it's a 2.77 metro. And it's growing at 3.4%. Outside of the Orlando Magic, you have no competition. Plus, you're a tourist city. Now, that's not always good. Because you're fighting for eyeballs. You're against the Disneys of the world and the Universals and all that stuff. Why not use that to your benefit, though? You could be the ultimate travel destination for away teams and start building your team there. And then if you get the right team there, whoa, we could really house a team here. It could be really fun. We could really have something here that'd be special. In which you're the ultimate destination you get away to. It's kind of what Vegas is doing with the Raiders right now. They're trying to build a team that's interesting enough, but every fan base is like, oh, I'd go to Vegas for a game. I'd go to Vegas for a game. You don't think families that could afford it, they wouldn't be just rolling in money trying to go to Orlando and be like, oh, I can take my kids to Disney and I can go see my favorite team play in Orlando? Hell yeah, that's a genius idea. It's a great option. It's used to housing big things and big events. But you also have a high competition rate. So it's an interesting balance there with Orlando. Now again, returning to a crash and burn, a city that clearly loves them some football. It's St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis still has the Cardinals. They have the Blues. So they have pro teams. Your issue with St. Louis is the metro area of St. Louis is 2.8 million people. That's a good number. However, that's going down by 0.67%. St. Louis proper is at 286,000 people, and it's going down at 5%. Okay? That's a huge, huge number of loss for directly in the city. Now you can say, oh, well, you just brought up Green Bay and New Orleans. I did. So it's not as if it's impossible. You also have a stadium there right away that can clearly house NFL games. Hell, the Battlehawks were drawing huge numbers for their games because people love football in Missouri and they're still pissed that their team was taken from them. Rightfully so. You could right a huge wrong in NFL history by bringing St. Louis a team. The issue is, do the economics of the area and, frankly, the poor reputation of the city, do they merit bringing an NFL team there? It's a big what if. The population there wants a team. They would support a team. That's great. However, being someone who's been downtown St. Louis a couple times in my life, can tell you, holy shit, is it somewhat of a ghost town that's kind of a pain in the ass. It's just, it feels like a stagnant city on its way out, not a thriving place to grow, and that's where the NFL would ultimately probably want to be. So it's a big question mark of what you could do. Or you could hopefully be something kind of like the Lions in a revitalization effort in a city that was down on its ass and needed to get back up off the ground. Maybe the NFL could help do that after, they contributed to, the bad reputation of St. Louis by taking away even more from them. So it's an interesting idea. You could right a wrong or you could crash and burn. It's a really interesting idea. Now we're on our final two bidders. Salt Lake City, Utah. One beautiful area to be in. You're not pulling from a lot of major markets. It's a 1.26 or almost 1.27 metro area. And Salt Lake City itself is 204,000 people. Not crazy big, but it's growing at 2.5%. It's getting a new hockey team. It already has a very, very popular NBA team that always gets numbers because it's a loyal market. You're getting younger people moving to Salt Lake City a lot more often now. A lot of that hipster population still loves the game, and it is a really big draw for young people to go there. So you're part of a growing market. So that's something you want to capitalize on. And outside of the Denver market, there's nothing close by to an NFL market. So there's almost zero chance you're taking away from an existing team. That's a big deal to think about. Salt Lake City's kind of just geographically located perfectly, in which there's not a whole lot of support. Now, the state has BYU to support. It has Utah and Utah State football, which are all popular. They clearly love the game, and they're getting more professional people there. They're getting more professional teams there. They're getting more people in general there. So it's a really interesting market to go to. And that, I think, is a worthwhile proposition to go to Salt Lake City. And it's our smallest, but it has a lot of history. It's Birmingham, Alabama. Just under 200,000 population. Metro's 1.18. Still very competitive with a lot of different markets that have an NFL team already. Your biggest bet is there. What's your competition? It's college sports. They don't have a professional team in Alabama. You can be the first professional team to go to Alabama. And I'm talking major professional team. I know they've gotten spring league teams or they've gotten other different leagues teams from time to time, but we're talking major league sports. You'd be the first one in the market. Plus, you know that market loves them some football. Alabama, Roll Tide, Crimson Tide. Are you kidding me? They would love to have a football team there. All really interesting markets. And you're pulling from the Florida Panhandle. You're pulling from Alabama. You're pulling from Mississippi. And New Orleans is your biggest thing. You could even say, maybe Tennessee Titans get hurt a little bit here, but Nashville is growing. It's not a real big issue. So you're not really hurting anything. You're only taking advantage of a market that you haven't taken advantage of yet. It's a smart play, and all of those are very worthwhile cities to grow into for the NFL. But those are all the U.S. cities that I think could be very viable options. Now, a viable option for you as we take a quick break here, honestly, go get yourself some stuff to support. We're spending money on this podcast. Head on over to ptecreative.etsy.com and go support yourself with some cool new merchandise. Over on Etsy, you can find a bunch of cool merchandise all centered around the content we do on the channel. We've got hats, we've got hoodies, we've got stickers. You want to trash the Philadelphia Eagles and Philly in general? Get the Dumpster Fire sticker. You want to show your support as a Packer fan? Get some cheese, some beer, and some love here with these stickers and t-shirts here. All great stuff. All fun merchandise to get. Go treat yourself. Go to ptecreative.etsy.com and support the channel. Some more great content coming your way. But back from that, we've seen U.S. bidding. Great. 12 viable option cities. But that's not inherently the goal. Now, you don't want to seem as though you're abandoning your existing market to go somewhere else. It's very important. We saw that in the St. Louis to Los Angeles. St. Louis has felt burnt by the NFL, which is another reason it was a viable option. Here's a big thing to notice. We are now getting to where it's not that America can't spend more money on football. They always will. It's the hotbed of football in the world for obvious reasons. We created it. It's our favorite sport. We love it here in the US. However, internationally is the untapped market in which you can make billions of dollars, which is the NFL's goal. And there's some important things to know. The NFL actually did a survey of fans. I have it here. Did a survey of fans in 2015. It's the latest research you can get. It's unfortunate because I'd love to have more updated numbers for you guys, but that's the only public release of information that I could find that was very worthwhile. Interestingly enough, here, survey of international fans, top 10 countries with support for the NFL. Number one is not the UK, even though that's where we keep going. It's Mexico with 23.3 million fans. Brazil at 19.7 is second. Canada's, then we get a huge drop. It goes Canada at 7 million, just under South Korea, which could be a lot of military presence there. However, Germany after that on top 5. UK's not even in the top 10, in the top 5. We get the UK at 6, Spain at 7, Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Argentina, rounding out the top 10 countries of international markets that love, by ratings and interest of social media and other things, pro football. Okay? Really interesting things to think about, because you obviously want to go after an international market. You want an untapped market. How do you get to that? We have games now being played. We have games being played with history in London, Munich, Frankfurt, Germany. Toronto, Canada did have games at one time. Very long ago, but we had games. And now we're going to see with my hometown team and my former resident city that I cannot stand, Philadelphia Eagles. Packers are going to play in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So smart. You're going to your second biggest market. And we've obviously seen games played in Mexico City and other games like that. So we have all these different cities that have hosted NFL football, shown interest in it. We're clearly going after, at all times, the UK market, Germany market, Mexican market, and Canada always has that because of the CFL. So there's a lot of viable options here. Plus, we have the idea that NFL Europe still used to exist back in the day. So we have this history of football being played internationally. So we're trying to get to that. Now, one viable option a lot of people may think of is, let's go to Canada. Let's go to Canadian bidding teams. Here's your biggest issue. Some people say, buy the CFL. The CFL most likely would be worth about $1 million in a bid. Or not $1 million in a bid. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to shit on you that bad. Canadian Football League. Theoretically, the value of the Canadian Football League is maybe about $1 billion in a bid. So let's say you could get it for $2 billion. Your issues with that is you're not seeing a lot of good attendance marks throughout the entire Canadian Football League. There's a few markets that show that they do get good numbers for football in the CFL. But with Canada, you have all the concerns you already have, which is, do we have significant interest? Do we have financial backing? Do we have stadium availability? And do we have dilution of our product? So we're not going to get much dilution except maybe in the Toronto market, simply because there's so many people. But again, you have so many people. Is it really that big a deal? And maybe Vancouver you could talk about because of Seattle. However, you then have the issue of weather. With the NFL continually going to a market place that's trying to get dome stadiums or neutral playing fields as much as possible, fortunately we're in the age where outdoor stadiums in the north are becoming fewer and far between. Which shouldn't be the case in my opinion. You should have as many open air stadiums as possible because that's the way the game's supposed to be played. That's the history of the game. And playing through the elements is some of the most fun parts of the game. So Canada has that issue as well. So you got to think about those. However, I still think there are 3 viable markets here that could be worthwhile. Even 4 really when you put it down. So you can't just outright buy the CFL. Number one, it's an existing business. To do that and then integrate it into the NFL would be crazy. Yes, you have stadiums, but you don't have NFL level stadiums in a lot of these cases. So you don't have a great option for football to be just integrated that easily. So the Canadian football option is out. It's a great idea in theory. It's hilarious. Just be, let's just buy another league and just pit 8 of their teams in our league. It's hilarious to do, but it's not a worthwhile option. But you have good options here for teams. So let's start. The obvious market is Toronto, as I already talked about. The metro area of Toronto is 6.2 million people. There's 5.6 million people in the city. It is a beautiful city that can easily house a team. They already house the Toronto Argonauts of CFL. They have multiple American teams with the Raptors and the Blue Jays there. They've hosted the Buffalo Bills before. There's a lot of good things and viability of Toronto. Their winter temperatures are not crazy, which is also another factor. The average low in January is 19 degrees, which that's just about better than Green Bay, Wisconsin, because Green Bay is actually further north than Toronto is. So people forget that one. Or it's like almost dead even. But that market is viable for professional football in that way. You also have the Rogers Center, formerly known as the Sky Dome, which could fit 53,000 people for an NFL game, which is more worthwhile than even some stadiums we already have in the NFL. So that's a very worthwhile market. Plus, you're going into the Canadian market. So you could pull a lot of Canadian interest by going to Toronto in terms of viewership, in terms of fan base, merchandising, all that across the board is a very viable option. So you could go to Toronto with a team, and it's an extremely good option to open up an international market for you. And it's clearly proven successful in professional football or in professional sports before, with the Raptors, the MLB being there, the NHL being there. It clearly works. Now, again, another option is Vancouver, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And as of recording, I'll be there in a couple of weeks, actually. Vancouver market, it's growing, just like Toronto is, but Vancouver's growing at 7.28%. It's huge. It's got a 2.6 metro population. It's growing. The city itself was almost growing at 7%, because it's the majority of the metro is just Vancouver itself at 2.4 million people. Great temperature, so you don't have to worry about that Canadian issue of temperature-wise. They host the BC Lions already in the CFL, and they are the closest thing to a real team that you could get like the NFL. They already have BC Place, which is a retractable roof stadium. It's got a 54.5 thousand cap for football, but you already have a stadium in place right away that you could use if you could make that deal. And it's far enough away from Seattle with enough people that you're not really diluting an existing NFL market. It's an incredibly worthwhile decision, and you're getting young people in Vancouver. You're getting young fan bases, and you're getting an entire... If you look at the actual map, geographical map of the United States, Canada, and Mexico, you will see the eastern coasts, all populated hugely. You go western, all populated hugely, just not with football. So you're getting a different flair for the West if you go to Vancouver, which is a really viable option. Another option here is Montreal. 3.67 million people with a 4.2 metro, and it's growing at 4.5%. They have Olympic Stadium. They host the Montreal Alouettes, although they're not super popular. However, biggest stadium you could get in Canada was 66.3 thousand people for that stadium for football. Olympic Stadium was kind of branded poorly due to limited use. It's an older stadium, but it's still worthwhile. It's another thing that you could house a game or two for a Toronto team or a Canadian team in Montreal and really get a good viable turnout, because you can house it in a different area. The Canadians will probably come and support it. They have other professional sports teams, especially through hockey. So it's a viable option for you. I also considered Calgary. Calgary, you get a bit more of that Canadian style temperatures. The biggest issue I have with Calgary, although it's a large city with enough people with 1.48 million in the metro, and it's growing at almost 7%, and is popular for sports. The best option for football is 35,000 people of a stadium. you'd be looking at an entire reconstruction job. And you're looking at, although we have global warming and rising temperatures, which is a real thing, um, regardless of your politics, you can't argue science. But you're dealing with more of that traditional Canadian um, winter and temperatures where the high temperature on average of Calgary is 62 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not as if it's like a real. It's not the same. Where in January the average low temperature is 7 degrees. It's a bit of a bitch for a lot of people. Not for me. Love the cold, and obviously I'm from from Wisconsin and I love it here. But I'm back. I'm so glad to be back home now in the great state of Wisconsin. However, um, it doesn't have a stadium, and you're dealing with weather issues. So is Calgary the best option? I would love a team in Calgary, but I just don't know if it's the best option for a Canadian team. But we all know the CFL is out of contention. Canadian market, really interesting. I think it would be very worthwhile to look at a team there or two teams there, maybe balance out Canada there. Plus, you're getting almost the extension of the U.S., so it's a safer market to tap into because you could get a lot of American fans to go to games simply because it's closer and friendly relations between the country and the U.S. help that quite a bit. Another thing just like that is down in Mexico, so we got some Mexican bidders as well for teams. Your number one obvious is Mexico City. Mexico City is, I'll just put it frankly, fucking enormous. 9.2 million people, and it's growing at 4.05%. That's just the city. The metro population's going up by 8.3%. It's 21.8 million people. It's fucking huge. You're essentially picking up a new New York. You have Estadio Azteca, which is 81,000 people plus as an outdoor stadium. You also have another outdoor stadium available too, an Estadio Olímpico Universitario. So, and that's 72,000 people. Mexico City, huge elevation gain there. We do have some environmental concerns in Mexico. We do have concerns about stadium is they love doing a ton of events there, and NFL games have had to be rescheduled in Mexico City, which is really, really unfortunate due to stadium issues in the past. So you'd have to get over that. You're getting a huge, huge market, but you're also getting a further southern market as well. So there comes advantages and disadvantages to that. Obviously, the people are there. Mexico is the biggest market to go to. So it'd be logical you could go to the biggest market in your next biggest market. So, in terms of mini markets into bigger markets, Mexico is the best market, and the best mini market in that is Mexico City. You could say the majority of the population that does identify as an NFL fan in Mexico comes from Mexico City, just simply by numbers. And it's clearly no stranger to sports. It's clearly, with all the soccer population, baseball, everything else that's housed there, Mexico City is a really viable option. Another viable option, and one I think could be slept on a lot, but I'm a big believer that this market could be worthwhile. It's Monterrey. Monterrey, 1.14 million people. It's growing at 0.6%. But the metro of Monterrey, which I really, really found fascinating, it's 5.3 million people, and it's growing at 26.39%. That is an astronomical growth number that you may want to be associated with. Has good marketability, and is very close to the U.S. From the U.S., you're roughly 4-ish hours from the border. It's a very American-friendly city because it has such cross-pollination in business with the United States. And because of that cross-pollination and the influx of American culture, it's a very friendly market to go into. You're not fighting to foster the entire sport because you already have a lot of that love there because of the proximity to the U.S. This is a market that has exposure from the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans, the Arizona Cardinals, the San Diego Chargers, all the LA teams. They all have a viable presence in Mexico, And Monterey being so close and so American friendly, it's a really good option. They have a stadium that has 53,000, so you could already rent that right away to house your games. And it's a soccer level stadium, so size won't be an issue. You could possibly even add more people for an American football game there. Monterey's a very interesting one because the population spike is enormous, and that'd be something you may really, really want to get into if you're an NFL team bidding, which is so, so smart. You want to get into those markets while they're hot and see what you can do with them. Now, before we continue, you want to see what you can do with some really hot content. You should head on over to our channels and go check it out. Monday through Saturday, we got a bunch of new content that's all great all the time. Monday, you're getting Pokemon card pack openings. Tuesday, it's the flagship ONETA Show. A lot of rotating topics. This upcoming week, we're going to be doing a review of WWE SummerSlam, which is going to be really fun. We just did a Deadpool and Wolverine review over on the ONETA Show, which is also very cool. Wednesday, it's Pokemon Bliss and Oblivion Project with new art, new Pokemon, new options, new possibilities, just like this expansion show. Thursday, you're already here, you already know it, you already love it. It's the ONETA Football Show. Currently in the expansion series, we already did the How to Fix College Football series, and we're getting rid of. No chance. We're getting ready for the upcoming NFL season. As of recording, I'm recording this right before the Hall of Fame game. Hell, I'm going to be able to watch a little bit of that game and be happy just to see football again. Get ready for the game and get ready for the options of the NFL with the expansion series and the rest of the show coming your way with more co-hosts, which is going to be really fun. Friday, it's rotating topics. You get the ONETA Adventure Show for some travel options, the Brick Builder Show to get some Lego builds in your life, Pokemon card pack openings, Yu-Gi-Oh card pack openings, Arcana pack openings, all kinds of fun stuff on Fridays. This Friday, I can tell you we're going to have the new Pokemon card set up and running for you on this Friday, so it's going to be really fun. Plus, there's some specials coming your way. And now, the ONETA Movie Show is also available via YouTube and Spotify, just like the rest of that content's available on YouTube. And you can see clips of all that stuff on social, on TikTok and Instagram. So go follow all that stuff. Go check out our new content that's coming out Monday through Saturday now. The ONETA Movie Show is really fun. You're going to get a little bit of talking to E.T. to continue our big box office series from back in the day. And we have new content coming to that channel as well. So go check out the ONETA Movie Show on Saturdays and all of our good content Monday through Saturday. Now, our biggest one here is this, my friends. My friend. We have the European market. With the European market is clearly the place we want to go to. One, we're playing games there constantly. London is clearly the next place that people want to go to in the NFL to be a part of something big and theoretically special or something of the like. Now you might be saying, what? What do you mean by that? So, London is clearly trying to be the next host team in the NFL's eyes, right? You have games being played there twice, 3 times, I think up to 5 times this year. Huge market. We have Munich getting games, Frankfurt getting games. All the European markets are really popular for the NFL to try to attack. Number 1. Number 2, you have NFL Europe history throughout the entire continent. You have Netherlands, Spain, Germany, Scotland, England. Like, all these countries have had NFL Europe teams, but NFL teams in them before. So they're all really viable options. So think about that as you go forward. Think about it. Again, we're looking at viability. We're looking at, do they have numbers and the support systems to be there? Let's start with the UK, because that's clearly where the NFL really wants to be and go. Your most obvious logical place is London. There's 8.2 million people there. The metro is 13.7. What is the most attractive thing about London? Obviously, number 1 is numbers. Number 2, huge sports hotbed. It hosts Olympics. It does all the big events. It's clearly a place to be. And they are in no problems for housing teams of sports. Prior to this, prior to Jacksonville making a deal to stay in Jacksonville for a longer time period, which I'll look that up for you right now, folks. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, just about a month ago, I want to say, they just signed a deal to stay in Jacksonville for longer, um, which was insane. It's a $1.4 billion deal. So clearly they're going to stay there. And the stadium of the future will keep Jacksonville there for at least 30 more years. Prior to that deal, when I have been working on this project since last November, before I even started the podcast. It's one of those big what if projects I always wanted to do. I was of the opinion Jacksonville should just move to London. You historically haven't had great turnouts in Jacksonville. You had a ton of the blackout issues back in the day when they used to do the blackout market games. But you were drawing crowds in London. You have family history there. As much as I cannot stand that fucking Mark, Tony Khan, and All Elite Wrestling, because he's a fucking Mark. The Khan family clearly has a lot of history in London, owning their own Premier League team there, and Jacksonville playing so many games. It's almost like they're an extended home team when they're in London. Why not just take advantage of that? But they just signed a 30-year lease on a new stadium. So what's the point of doing that then? So I had to pivot in thinking about this series. However, London is not the part you have to pivot off of. Huge, huge market. And think about this. The NFL already has an existing relationship with these four stadiums. Emirates Stadium, 60,000 people. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 62.8 thousand people could be there. Twickenham Stadium, 75,000 people. Wembley Stadium, 86,000 people. And all of them are semi-covered or indoor stadiums. No weather issues, used to giant markets, used to giant events, used to giant sports crowds. London is the place to go in the UK, obviously. But there's some other ones that maybe we could even get another team to the UK, which is really smart to do. You go to Birmingham, which is a really, really interesting option. Birmingham 2.3 million people. The Metro's 2.4. So again, really concentrated population density there with two viable stadiums. You have Molineux Stadium, which is at 38,000, but could go up to 50,000, depending on it. And Wolverhampton plays there. Or you have Villa Park, or Villa Park, depending on your pronunciation of Villa Park. 42,000 people can get in that stadium, and again, it goes up to 50 with theoretically the construction for professional football. And Aston and Birmingham play there. So you have viable options for, and they're indoors as well. To my knowledge, I might have to double check that one. But again, good options that are used to sports. There's actually a lot of affluent money there. A lot of jewel trade goes through Birmingham, which I did not know until I did some research for the show. So it was a really interesting market to get to with money. So you want to be in those bigger markets with money. Certainly a place that could possibly hold international sports for you, and maybe a friendly city with higher end, higher class business there. A lot of logical options to think that on the NFL level you would have connections there to do something with. So viable. And then finally, our third one is Manchester. Everyone in the U.S. knows Manchester because of Manchester United. However, 1.74 million people. Metro's 2.55. You have Etihad Stadium. 53,000 people could be there for football. Or Old Trafford. 74,000 people could be there for football. Manchester, more of a classic market to my knowledge and my research. However, rabid sports fan base that can support two huge soccer franchises. So professional sports isn't the problem. And with the exposure that the NFL has been getting in the UK, you can probably foster that fan base even more to be rabid for you. So those are three huge UK markets that could be really, really worthwhile to look into for international play to get there. So all very viable options. Another viable market is Germany, which we're seeing now as we're getting more Germany games over. To the point where one of my friends, she's a Carolina Panther fan, she was trying to see if her time off would work to go over to Germany for the Carolina Panther game in Germany. So clearly, international fans that can pull it off will try to do it. But when we go to the German market, what's really interesting is there's 6 cities, all with viability. Germany itself is not that huge of a country, actually. But we have the top 5 international fan base of Germany here. Plus, another thing that really, really helps Germany. Germany has a huge American presence, especially through military, due to the history of the World War II split of the countries and them reuniting. There's a huge military population from the West, specifically from the U.S. there, that really helps foster American culture in Germany, so it is a very worthwhile option to look into German cities. 6 cities that are available to you in Germany. One is Dusseldorf, right on the Rhine River, with a metro of 2.9 million people. That's huge. One thing is Dusseldorf is part of the next 2 cities as well that combine as part of the state population there is 10.93 million people, all within a really close radius. That's why I say like state population essentially, because these cities are all about 45 minutes to an hour apart, just making one giant conglomeration of people. But Dusseldorf itself, right on the Rhine River, extremely worthwhile. Merkur Arena is 54,000 people strong, and soon I believe is going to get an NFL game. The other thing that's a huge benefit for Dusseldorf, it holds one of the NFL's international offices. There's 3 international offices to the NFL, and the German office is in Dusseldorf. So you'd already have a league office and league presence in Dusseldorf, so it'd be really, really worthwhile infrastructure-wise. Plus, you have German soccer there with an American influx coming. It's a very friendly market. Continuation of that would be Cologne, which is a 2.8 million metro, which has Rhine Energy Stadium, which is Stadion, I should say. And that has just under 50,000 population. Again, really viable market. And you have Dortmund. Dortmund is the smallest of the cities itself, but the largest metro at 5.17 million. And it has Westfalen Stadium, which is 81,000 strong. That's a real NFL stadium. That's the reason you look at Dortmund. Dortmund itself is not as attractive as Dusseldorf or Cologne, which Cologne is the biggest. I should have said that by itself with 1 million people. But you're probably pulling from all 3 markets when you put a team there anyways. So it's one of the things you should really contemplate, and why Dortmund could be a very interesting, viable option for you. Then we go to Munich. Munich is an incredibly beautiful city that has a really good basis to go off of. 1.4 million or 1.49 million people, 6 million, or just under 6 million metro. Big thing here, Munich, you're getting just under the biggest city that you can get. But it's a huge international city that is used to doing a lot of big things, such as Oktoberfest, big soccer tournaments. You have Olympia Stadium Munich, which is 63,000 people, or Allianz Arena, which is 75,000 people. So again, you have these big markets that you could go right into stadium-wise, and it's an international city with an international flair that you've already played games in. it's a very worthwhile option to look into. And what was really funny, it was getting some history into the area of Munich where they kind of think of themselves as Bavarians first, um, not Germans, which is very fun and unique market to look into, which I think could really be beneficial for an NFL market. Another one, Frankfurt, 2.7 metro, and Deutsche Bank Park at 51,000 people. It's just a really interesting market that has history because of NFL Germany or NFL Europe. With the Frankfurt Galaxy team back in the day, it was one of the more successful European teams. So history here for Frankfurt is a big option. And finally, you have Berlin. Berlin itself, 3.6 million people, 6.1 metro, Olympia Stadium, 74,000 strong, capital of the country. Everything says Berlin, 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 but Berlin doesn't have as much of the history here and it hasn't been hosting international games as much. So that's what gives me pause is why are Munich and Frankfurt getting games and Dusseldorf has the NFL office? Why are we going away from that? So that's kind of the pause that I get with a Berlin team. But numbers wise, it justifies it. Sports interest wise, it justifies it. Travel wise, it justifies it pretty well. It is to the northeastern section of the country, so it's the furthest away, I guess, internationally to get to. However, I mean, market wise, it's a great option that really can't be beaten. Much better. But that's Germany, which again, 6 viable options for a team and really 4 if you think about it because of Dusseldorf, Cologne, and Dortmund being so close together. But you could almost do a rotational thing through stadiums there, which could be really interesting and fun to see to really build up the fan base of those areas. But 4 real viable markets and 6 individual markets. Finally, we go to Spain. Spain, again, under-tap market. You have Spain being just under the UK in terms of popularity with the NFL. You have history here with NFL Europe, but incredibly passionate and vibrant culture that loves its sports and loves its competition and really gives you more of an international flair, which is another reason I think Spain could be a really worthwhile option. Plus, their sports history is so important to this pitch. With Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, you have huge soccer popularity there, which gives competition basis a real idea of could we be successful here. We'd start in Madrid, 2.8 million people, 7.3 or 7.03 metro. Here your biggest things are we host the big things in terms of generally speaking in the country of Spain. We have Real Madrid. We have the Metropolitano Stadium, which is 70,000 people where Atletico Madrid plays. We have Santiago Bernabeu with 81,000 people. We are in terms of Madrid, has the ability to host huge giant events. It's hosted soccer tournaments, live events, all kinds of things, just like all these big cities across Europe have. And you're getting more towards the capital of what you're really looking for. So it's a really good housing market to be involved in. It's a really viable option to go to. Your next option, which is even kind of crazier, is Barcelona. Barcelona by itself 1.4. However, the metro is 5.1 million people, so it's a huge metro to go to. And apologies on the European stats. Didn't have good percentage gains or losses there. However, Barcelona plays there, or Barcelona. They have history with NFL Europe. Louis Companies, 55,000 people, or almost 56, could be in that stadium. You also have Camp Nou, which can house almost 100,000 people. That could be a Super Bowl level stadium because of the former history of sports there as an international market. you have to think long-term business-wise. Could we be playing international Super Bowls? Could we be playing international championship games or Pro Bowls or all that good stuff? All that is extremely attractive to draw international markets in, and Barcelona has a history and a uniqueness to it that could be extremely viable as a market. It's an incredibly interesting market to get to with a vibrant culture. And the idea of being near Camp Nou or Camp Nou adjacent or in Camp Nou, oh, don't tell me big business of NFL wouldn't want to be there. So all are really, really viable options there. And incredibly worthwhile. That is all the cities that could be vying for an NFL team in a new expansion of 40 teams. 4-0, if you will. Huge, huge, huge spike in what we could be doing business wise as an NFL market. So you have 29 new viable city options there. That could be really interesting to house a team. And you can find out what teams were picked or what cities were picked next week on the channel as we continue the expansion series. Next week, we're going to be picking cities, the teams that will be there, and how divisions are going to be redistributed based on this. You got to think about divisions always have to be redistributed. Right before the Houston Texans came into play, we once had the AFC Central with 6 teams. Crazy. Crazy talk. And you were having NFC North teams play with like Tennessee in that division. It was insane. So divisions would have to be redistributed to a degree, but we're going to get new teams with new cities, new divisions next week as a part of that. Plus, we're going to do some preview work for the expansion draft episode that's also coming for the NFL expansion series. So there you're going to get to see all the players that theoretically could be up or draft in an expansion draft and some reasons behind those for every single team in the NFL. So you can see it's going to give you a really good insight as a GM into what your team might be interested in doing, not only in this scenario, but in their near future without NFL expansion. How they team build would be a really interesting option to see that. So that's going to be next week on the channel as we continue the expansion. That is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening wherever you may be. If you did enjoy this, hit the heart, hit the like, hit the subscribe button if you could. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like about it. I'd love to hear your ideas for teams and what you guys think could be really fun options here. I would love to see what you guys would do in an expansion series. That'd be extremely cool. And again, check out all of our podcasts via YouTube or Spotify. Check out all of our content via YouTube. And you can see some specialty stuff with our socials on TikTok and Instagram as well. And to support the channel even more, head on over to Etsy shop, ptecreative.etsy.com. Get yourself some cool merch. That's going to do it for the episode today. I have been your host, Evan Davies. It has been a joy as always, and I can't wait to continue this expansion series next week. Peace, love, and hugs to you all. Go watch football.